So what I wanted to talk about today was, is there more than one timeline? And if it is it possible to jump from one timeline to another timeline? Most times, I'll say for myself, I never really thought about timelines. I never really thought about going back in time, going forward in time to the future, back to the past. Um, it was like uh, thoughts for that is like movies. Like you think of movies in that way. Like you can go back to the past and you get in a time machine and things like that. So early on in my spiritual journey, well, I'll say for me, the way that I view it, like a spiritual journey starts when we're born. Um, that's just my opinion. Uh, but when I say my spiritual journey, I'll say like when I started having my spiritual awakening. And I feel like our whole purpose in life when we're born is to find out what we're here for, and to fulfill that purpose, fulfill that role. And some people get lost in the constructs of life and um, the way things are going on in the world, and you get lost in that and you lose your identity and who you really are supposed to be. And then people normally go through a traumatic experience, from what I understand. People go through traumatic experiences and then they go through their spiritual awakening. Some people don't. Some people get high, have a trip, and then they go through a spiritual awakening, and then they go from there. Um, so everybody is different when they start to actually go through their spiritual awakening. And is for me when I started going through my spiritual awakening, things started coming into my realm of consciousness. And one of the things that came into my realm of consciousness was the idea of different timelines, was the idea of not necessarily going back in time or going forward into the future, but just being on the best timeline that you would like to be on, that gives you the most optimum success, happiness, and things like that. And I watched a documentary. I believe it was on the platform Gaia. If anybody watching this has Gaia, it was a documentary I was watching on there, and it was saying that when you switch timelines, it's not going to be like something dramatic. Like you're not going to wake up and then everybody around you is different. When you switch timelines, when you go from a different timeline, so time isn't linear. Time isn't, you know, this second, this second, this second, this second. Time is stacked on top of each other. So like this. So these are different timelines, and you could look at them as like time periods, because if it's a timeline, then it's linear. So we'll say time period. So it's a stamp in time. Uh, and this is like the lowest you'll be, where everything goes wrong in your life, and then you can progress up, 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 to reach the optimum timeline that you would like to be on, uh, which is, you know, happiness, fulfillment. You're fulfilling your purpose in life. You have the best job. You have the money, the cars. However, you may think you should be living your life for the best. How to say it, for you to be at your best. Um, so, and they said it would just be like little things that would be different in that timeline that would let you know that you're at a different time, that you're on a different timeline. So, what happens is if you vibrate at a high frequency, and you're happy and you're thinking positively, then you can go to a higher plane than where you are. So say I'm average right here, I'm happy, I'm going through life, but then I hit like 2 or 3 months where I'm like so happy and I'm doing my job and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, that I feel like that I'm supposed to do. You can go to a higher timeline, a more optimal timeline, as long as you sustain that vibration. And that was something that, watching the documentary, I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And then it made me think back. It was about probably 2 or 3 years ago. I'll say probably 2 years ago. Now, I've been at the same job that I'm at now for 10 years, around 10 years. And I drive the same way to work every single time. And my brother and my dad works at the same job. So I take the same highway to work every single time. Probably 95% of the time I'm going to work. And one day I was stuck in traffic. It was a little traffic jam. And I was on the phone with my partner. And we're talking. And I look over. Now, mind you, I've been taking this road forever. And I look over. And it's a waterfall on the side of the road. It's like, probably, if you can imagine it, like it's a highway, and on this side it's rocks, it's houses and stuff. Over here it's like it's nice scenery, nice trees and everything. On this side is trees, and then it's like a river and railroad tracks and things on that side. So I look over to my left because I'm stuck in traffic, and I'm just having a conversation with my partner, and it's a waterfall on the side where the rocks are, where the rocks and trees are. The waterfall has never been there before, and I just noticed it, and I'm talking to her, and I'm like, yo, like, it's a waterfall on the side of the road. And it's like, she was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, like, I never seen this waterfall before. Like, like I said, I've driven this road for years and years and years, and like sometimes mindlessly we'll drive the road, and we'll drive somewhere. Like, if you continue to drive that direction multiple times, like, you kind of do it. It's like second nature. Like, you don't even have to pay attention to where you're going because you've driven this road. So driving this highway multiple times, and this time I'm stuck in the traffic jam, and I look over, and it's a waterfall there. And I'm like, yo, like, I've never seen this waterfall before. Like, this waterfall has never been there. And it's like, no reason, like, where would the water be coming from? Like, there's no reason for the waterfall to be there. So that was about 2 years ago. This was before my spiritual awakening. This was before me watching a documentary about going through different timelines, being on the optimal timeline. So, yeah, so when I watched the documentary, it took me back to the moment where I was talking to her, and I'm like, yo, it's a waterfall on the side of the road. And so I wanted to be more mindful. So I'm like, yo, it was a waterfall. We both remembered the conversation about the waterfall. So when I got back on the road to go to work, I'm like driving, and I'm looking for the waterfall, and it's not there. Like, the waterfall is nowhere to be found. Like, is no waterfall there. I even went to work, and I asked my brother, I was like, I know you probably gonna think that I'm crazy, but like, have you ever seen a waterfall when you driving down this highway? And he's like, no, why? So like, I'm explaining it to him, and he looking at me like, yeah, okay, whatever. But it's like, I don't know, like, if I was on a more optimum timeline, like, because I don't remember my emotions, my feelings, my vibration at that time, because again, it was like 2 years ago, maybe three. So thinking back, the only thing that I can remember is looking over and seeing this waterfall. It was like a full blown waterfall. It wasn't like, when water kind of drips down the rocks or anything like that. No, it was like a full blown waterfall. So that just brought me back to like understanding, or kind of, I'll say, agreeing with the notion that there are different time periods that we can be in, that just has you on a different vibrational level than other people. Because I feel like in that moment, maybe the other people on the road might have saw the waterfall. I don't know any of the people that was on the road. I didn't stop and beep at anybody and ask them if they see this waterfall, because it was just crazy to me at that time. It's like, yo, it's a waterfall there, like, and then I kept moving, like the traffic picked up or whatever. But then thinking back after I watched the documentary, it was like, when you enter a different timeline, everything may seem the same. Even the people that's in the timeline may seem the same, but it will be like these little things, if you're paying attention, that will be different. And that was the one little thing that I can recall in that moment that was different, because it's not there anymore. Like the waterfall in that moment was there, and the waterfall is not there anymore. Like no matter how many times I drive slow up and down this road, like the waterfall isn't there. And I'm like, well, maybe I need to be stuck in traffic again in order for the waterfall to appear, but I'd rather not be stuck in traffic, so I'm not going to speak that into existence. But yeah, so again, like I'll say different time periods, because timelines technically they say don't exist because time isn't linear, so then you can't have a timeline, so you have time periods. So each moment, each second, each minute that you enter into is a different time, depending on what you do. Your next step takes you into that different time period. So yeah, so for me, the notion or the understanding of timelines, being able to jump timelines, being able to go into different time periods is true. It's just not the way that we are conditioned to think about it. The way we've been conditioned through movies to think about going into different time periods or different timelines. You're not going to wake up and like your whole family is going to be a whole different family. You're not going to wake up and like you had a black girlfriend and then you wake up and you have an Asian girlfriend, or like an Asian boyfriend, or things like that. Like for me, that's not how it works. And from my understanding and my experience, that's not how it works. And well, I'll talk about that in something else just came to mind, but I'll talk about that in another video because this video is getting kind of lengthy. But yeah, for me, it is possible to vibrate and take yourself onto another timeline. We'll just keep it at timeline, different time period. And if you vibrate at a low level, then you will be in that timeline or at that time period where, you know, more negativity is coming into your life, or more, you know, if you're vibrating high, more positivity is coming into your life. So if anybody watching this has had that experience or has this understanding, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, share this video, and just, yeah, if you had this experience before, if you had any type of experience, if you can recall an experience like this, like, I would like to hear about it. And we can go from there. We can even set up, like, you know, maybe a Zoom meeting or something like that, just to talk about it.